Alright, so in this video I'm going to cover the micro interactions in the bubble sort trainer. So here I have the Unity scene open down to the tray level, and I kind of opened up some parts underneath just to expose all the tray. You can see that the bubble sort tray script is sitting at this level. We have this canvas instructions, which is this part. It's just two text pieces with an image behind each one. And one's called active text, one's called passive text. So I just found it's easier to tell them to do something, wait for them to do something, and then give them a response after they do something. That's why this one's passive, this one's active. So tell them to do something, wait for it, they do something, and then they explain what they did. It's one way to teach. And then we have this whole canvas controls. It's this whole bottom part. And there's a script here, UI controls. And this has controlling the two buttons, and it's controlling these two things. It's in here. Container amount. Nope. So it's got the current steps, the goal steps. I have to double check because there's no other script, so it must be this one controlling them. They got the two buttons that they're aware of, next and swap. And it's aware of the tray script. It looked like I needed to send some communication up there. A little bit messy, but and then okay, active left, active. Yeah, so this is all the 2D display of the containers in there. So it's like the list, but the 2D version of it that sits between the two buttons. Then we have the swap button and the next button, and each button, if you open underneath it, that's where the mesh, the collider, the rigid body, and its button pushable script is. And then you have the up and down position. So here's my three scripts to wrap up for the micro interactions, bubble sort tray, UI controls, and button pushable. So bubble sort tray is kind of sitting at the root of it. Looks like it's aware of the passive instruction, active instruction, the current steps. It's controlling current steps and goal steps. Swap button, next button, UI controls. So it knows basically everything underneath it. And that's what all this is. So on awake, it's just setting a bunch of strings, making sure they're empty. We have tray transition. So we have some enumerators, some movements here, animation over time on a separate thread. And this is moving the tray from a start position to an end position over a certain amount of time. You've seen stuff like that. Text transition. So which text are we changing? What's its start color, its end color, and what should be its ending string? So you've seen a lot of this. The only thing I'll make a note of is that this is just changing the color. And end text. So if color, so this is here because if end color alpha is 1, meaning the text is like gone. Whatever element this is, UI element, the text is transparent, and we're getting ready to set it to something, meaning ramp it up from alpha 0 to alpha 1, make it appear opaque. But we're setting the text to something else. So while the text is invisible, we can just quickly set the text to something else. It doesn't matter because the user will never see it. And then we ramp up the alpha from 0 to 1, and then it looks like the text. So I did a lot. I'll like have a certain text say something, fade it down to 0, fade it down to alpha 0, make it disappear, change the actual content in it, the string, and then and then change it back to 1, change the alpha back up to 1. So that's why this has a string here. What should we change the color, the text to? after we ramp the color. And then a basic color transition. So this is for images. We can have a start color and an end color change. And as far as the methods go, we have always quite a bit, shrinking them all down here. Ooh, we have another enumerator down here. Return null. Okay. It's just empty. I'm just going to assume I was doing something there and I didn't end up finishing it. So here's our main methods. Turn buttons on and off. So I needed some extra functionality on the buttons where not only could they be usable and not usable, but they needed to be blinking. So here you can see like start tutorial blink to like pull the user's attention. So we have some turning the buttons on and off based on what stage of the tutorial or level 1 we're at. Resetting the tray. Task is successful, unsuccessful. Update the tray. So when I update the tray, you see there's many parts of it, many parts of the UI, and if the button should be on and off. So we have the set listener state. That's probably going to be the main part of it. So introduction to next button. So we're setting all the different parts of the UI. So the UI controls was sophisticated enough where there's a big section of it, whereas making the code too complicated up here, where I create its own script and just set messages, methods to it to update. Passive instruction, active instruction, I'm setting the text on those, and then ramping their color up and down. So that's why if I click play, if I have the enumeration set to the right one, you can see it fade up. So I'm just setting the text while it's missing, while it's alpha 0, and then ramping it up to alpha 1. And that's what these start coroutines are. Turn on the button after 2 seconds, or reset timer times 2, whatever that is. I think the reset timer is already at 2, so I mean that's 4. So there's like little delays. There's a lot of play testing to get these numbers right. So if you watch, what I want is the text to gracefully come up one after the other, kind of pulling the attention. Notice the button doesn't fade up till after that. So this comes up, wait, this comes up, wait, then this fades up. So 1, 2, 3. Only pull their attention to one thing at a time. And that's what all this is doing. And that's why a lot of these numbers are being tweaked on the fly. And then UI controls is setting UI size. So maybe we can briefly look over there. I don't know if I'm ready to jump down to another script, but this one is getting to the real nitty gritty of managing all these little text and image parts. So I'm guessing it called set UI size. So this one, it's kind of communicating with the container manager. And here's set UI size. So if I shrink this, that might probably be the... I just want to make sure there's no... Yeah, so it's not a list. Oh, it is a listener. But it doesn't have the main method of the set listener state. So you notice I'm just calling the bubble tray. He's really a listener, and he's controlling the UI controls. It just seemed the most sense for me at the time. So this set UI size is being called. In this case, it was 0, which means shrink down. So all these rect highlights and text container amounts, they're all the little parts. See if I can zoom up in here. It's this little strip in here that grows. So we have active, there's this little blue thing. Let's see if I can get in there. Yep, see, and then there's stuff underneath it. And then there's all these text amounts. These are all the numbers. So if there's a whole list, say 8 containers, all that have different elements, all these will be turned on. and then where to place the buttons. So as this thing grows and shrinks, you see that the buttons get moved too. So this whole thing comes along for the ride. Like, I think current and goal stays in one spot. But notice like this all got turned on. 2 text elements got turned on here. Yeah, I don't think it's going to grow during the tutorial. No, so let me just jump to like task 3. All right, so now that you see that the tray is responsible for moving itself, which is, it moves the whole thing. That's part of that tray transition enumeration. But notice how this list grows, and as this list is growing, all these images are scaling out, and these button positions are moving, and these text elements get filled out and placed, and we have these 2 highlights that move along. So all that stuff is being set. And when you're actually using the tray, say if I hit a swap, there's methods being called on UI controls that will change this stuff. And notice how those 2 little blue highlights moved as the tray was moving. And so all these methods are communicating back and forth. And then if I swap, so you get the idea. All right. So that's with the set UI size, the biggest one here. It's really, you can see it going through and figuring out the scaling, the positioning, the image colors. Should we be doing instant changes or calling a coroutine and doing the change over time? That's what all this code is figuring out. So anyway, back to button sort tray, and as you can see, that there's a lot of things being said at this level, but when it calls this, the UI controls, it's calling methods that are doing even more stuff. It's just too complicated to do it here. And when buttons are pushed, the buttons go and notify the bubble sort level, but that gets filtered down through the listeners, and so the UI controls don't do anything. So the bubble sort tray does. Sometimes it turns buttons on or off, or it's incrementing the current number of steps that the user's taken, or what have you. Let's see, turn on buttons, update tray, set listener state, turn on active instruction. It's getting that prepped. So, and then update tray. So this is figuring out how to move it. So when you hit the move button, and it moves from one position to the next position from left to right. And then if it's at the end, so if it's checking what container it's at, and then it's figuring out the tray position. And then once that's done, it calls a coroutine to move the tray. So let me jump to one of the buttons. So the button is a prefab, so I can use it over and over again in different ways. And the core of it is that there's a collider on it, so the hand model can interact with it, and this button pushable is the big script for it. So it's a listener as well. It needs to know like where its top position, and it's how high up can it go, how low can it go. And what colors are it when it's active, not active, and some floats to start figuring out like when the hand touches it, where was the hand starting. Well, I'm only concerned with the heights, the wide positions for the hand and the button. And the button was used in binary math, and there was some, so is touchable, pushable, poppable. So can it be touched? Can it be turned on or not? Or is it turned on or not? Is it pushable? Sometimes you want it turned on, but you don't want the user to be able to push it. So like in the tutorial, and is it poppable, meaning should the button pop up, or when you push it down, should it stay down? or should always pop back up. So in this case, they're not poppable. You push it and it stays down once it's as far as down as it can get. So when you want to reset the button, you put it back to its highest spot, and you can turn it off. It's not touched, so it's reset back to like it can be interactable. It's not blinking. It's not part of the tutorial. It can be touched. And the active color, and it's pushable, what have you. And so there's some extra features in here, like should it be blinking, should it not be? And these blinkings are just starting and stopping coroutines of just ramping colors up and down. So the color ramps up to black and back down to gray, and do that over a second, over and over again. Just keeps calling these scripts while it's blinkable. And then on trigger enter is when the hand model actually first touches it. And then I'm checking, is it on this layer 9, which is the hand model? And is the button pushable? And if so, this is just some figuring out how far down should we push the button. So where was the button currently at? Where was the hand currently at? Checking these Y deltas, and then setting a new position. And then on trigger stay is called, on trigger enter is only called the first time that a collider and a trigger touch. On trigger stay is constantly called as long as those two are in contact. And on trigger exit, if you need that too, is called when they separate their ways. The distance between them has changed and they're no longer touching. So while they're touching, we go through and we keep seeing how far down should we keep pushing down the button, because the hand is still on the button, meaning the user's trying to push it down, is in the process of trying to push it down. And on trigger exit, when the user has left, their hand has moved away, we figure out if it's poppable, the button pops back up to its position. And there's some extra math in here because you don't know, like the user can come up from the bottom, the user can come at this from the side. I have to figure out some edge cases. I can't just automatically assume the user's going to push it down from the top. So I want to make sure the button acts like a real button as much as possible. That's what the button pushable is doing. Ultimately, when the button is pushed, he is the last micro interaction, the main micro interaction. And what happens is somehow, not blinking. So on trigger stay, if we finally get to a position, the button actually goes below its established down position, which is just an empty transform, down vertical position. When it passes this, we know that the button has been far enough down, I consider it pushed. So a bunch of stuff, it disables it, it's not pushable anymore, and we tell the level manager, hey, this button was pushed, this is the name of it. Then the level manager figures everything else out. Are we in a situation with the enumerations that I should do something? Should I be concerned about it? Are we in a certain state of the game that I should be concerned that this button was pushed? And so button tray is just really figuring out where the tray needs to be and all the UI elements based on how the user is interacting during the task. UI controls are just finer controls on that whole like growing little 2D list showing what's happening in this list of containers. And button pushables on the two buttons, swap and move. And that's pretty much it. I went through the tray, passive, active, text, the swap button, the move button, this little list, this image, this number list that grows in the middle, the current and the goal numbers are updated over here. All right. So I think I'm going to call it a number list tray. Okay, current goal steps are up here in the bubble sort tray. Yep. So if you have any questions about going deeper in any of those three scripts, if you can't read through it and you have questions, you can email me. Otherwise, that's enough information to know like what's going on, how the two are connecting and communicating with the scripts, and those were the micro interactions.